Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
So these days, we've all got a bit of time on our hands, and as much as we might not want to give WWE money right now, the network is still one of the best time occupiers going. Sorry Netflix, what have you done for me lately? To help those currently losing their marbles, we've put together a watch list of long-running WWE feuds you can now binge watch in their entirety. Most lists we do are quite spoilery by nature, because most often it's, what happens that makes the match list-worthy. However, just this once, we're going to try and avoid spoilers where we can, just list all the most notable matches and moments in each feud and how you can find them on the network. We'll be doing each feud in chronological order, so you may be able to assume some spoilers based on the order of matches, but remember, when you assume, it makes an ass out of you and also you're an idiot. Here are 10 amazing WWE feuds to binge watch in isolation. Number 10, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. The greatest example of sibling rivalry ever booked in a squared circle began in 1993 when Bret the Hitman Hart ran afoul of his younger brother, Captain Pissy Owen Hart. What started as petty jealousy soon escalated into a family-shattering melodrama that lasted over a full calendar year. It started at Survivor Series 1993 with a 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match featuring the entire Hart family. The rivalry boiled over during a tag team championship match at the Royal Rumble 1994, which led to the brothers' phenomenal instant classic at WrestleMania 10. Owen then tried to copy his brother's previous success by wrestling as part of the tournament at King of the Ring 1994. At SummerSlam, the two fought again in one of the most acclaimed cage matches in WWE history, earning 5 stars from the Wrestling Observer, no less. At Survivor Series 94, their rivalry is taken to a new level of soap when Owen inserted himself in a submission match between Bret Hart and Bob Backlund. Their feud is blown off on the March 13th, 1995 episode of Raw when the brothers come to blows in a no-holds-barred match. It's an amazing feud that saw both men accomplish great things, was brilliantly booked not only in the build-up to the implosion itself, but in detailing the fallout and how it affected the entire Hart family, especially their thwomp of a dad. Number 9, CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy. In 2008, CM Punk won the Money in the Bank ladder match at Mania and cashed it in to win the World Heavyweight Championship. However, he didn't take part in any really good feuds and lost the title via forfeit off-screen after being kicked in the head by Randall Keith. WWE looked at that and thought, oh no, we broke it. Then in 2009, they tried again. CM Punk won Money in the Bank for the second year in a row, and at Extreme Rules 2009 cashed it in on Jeff Hardy. So began 2009's best feud, featuring some of Punk's greatest character work in his WWE tenure. And though it's not mentioned nearly as much, it's Jeff Hardy's best as well. On the June 15th episode of Raw, there was a triple threat between Punk, Hardy, and Edge, followed by a one-on-one match at The Bash pay-per-view. The feud deepened between The Bash and Night of Champions 2009, where the two fought again, still in standard singles competition. The feud reached its peak, main eventing SummerSlam 2009 with Punk and Hardy in a fantastic tables, ladders, and chairs match that saw Jeff doing something very silly with a big ladder. Shortly thereafter, the feud reached a definitive end when Punk and Hardy fought in a steel cage match on the August 28th episode of SmackDown, with the stipulation being the loser must leave WWE. Number 8, Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys. Tables, ladders, and chairs, oh my. The Attitude Era was home to some of the greatest teams to ever hold a tag rope. The New Age Outlaws, the Acolytes, the Rock and Sock Connection, the Brothers of Destruction, but none encapsulated the high-octane, high-impact era more than the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian. Their work with discount furniture defined a generation of the business, and it all started, of course, with Terry Runnels. How could it not? In late 1999, the Hardys and Edge and Christian began a best-of-5 series to win Terry as a manager and $100,000. This series was called the Terry Invitational Tournament, or TIT. Do you get it? This tournament, that also wasn't a tournament, but I guess you can't spell TIT that way, ended with an acclaimed ladder match at No Mercy 99, which was literally so good it turned all the men babyface. 1999 also saw the arrival of the table-philiac Dudley Boys, who had an amazing tables match with the Hardys at Royal Rumble 2000. Finally, at Mania 2000, all the pieces came together when Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys fought in what was called a triangle ladder match for the tag team straps, but it also involved tables and chairs, so it was basically the first TLC match. TLC 1 officially took place at SummerSlam 2000, with the three teams again battling for the tag team championships, which was followed by the infamous TLC 2 at WrestleMania X7. The last furniture match, which saw the involvement of all three teams, was the May 24th, 2001 episode of SmackDown, which saw Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit take on the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian in a 4-way TLC match for the gold. Number 7, The Undertaker's streak versus DX. The streak of Big Mark the Murderer almost seems like a distant memory right now, but between Manias 21 and 30, it was a tentpole fixture of the show of shows. Before it was eventually shattered by the world's scariest Von Trapp, no one came closer than DX. DX, who between them racked up 4 attempts at the streak, each of them crazy good. Start watching at WrestleMania 25, where Taker battled Shawn Michaels in what remains possibly the best Mania match on record. Sometime later, on the December 14th, 2009 episode of Raw, the night of the prestigious Slammy Awards, Michaels calls out Taker for Mania one more time. Undertaker, currently the World Heavyweight Champion, refused, which gave Shawn Michaels a new goal: win the 2010 Royal Rumble. From there, Michaels goes on to interfere in the World Heavyweight Championship Chamber match at Elimination Chamber 2010, kicking mysterious Christerius in his big undead chin. WrestleMania 26 follows with Undertaker facing Michaels one more time. Taker's streak versus Shawn Michaels' career. 1 year later, Triple H steps up to the plate in a 30-minute no-holds-barred match that was the best part of the truly terrible WrestleMania 27. Finally, at Mania 28, after almost half a decade of fighting DX at Mania, Undertaker takes on Triple H with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee inside Hell in a Cell in a match that saw the end of an era. But also, all 3 men involved in that match would go on to wrestle further matches, including ones against each other in Saudi Arabia, so shrug. Number 6, the 4 Horsewomen of NXT versus each other. 4 women, no horses, and 6 takeovers, showcasing some of the most impactful matches in the history of women's wrestling. Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch took center focus for a full calendar year in NXT, starting at NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, with Charlotte taking on Bayley. Charlotte then takes on her former BFF Sasha Banks at NXT TakeOver R-Evolution, before at TakeOver Rival we see the first and, checks notes, only televised Fatal 4-Way to feature Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley, and Becky. At this point, the only horsewoman to have not yet received a feature standout showcase at a takeover was Becky. That all changes at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable with Becky Lynch versus The Boss. That match is absolute whammers, but it gets better at TakeOver Brooklyn 1 with the iconic Sasha Banks versus Bayley. After that match, all 4 horsewomen take part in the infamous curtain call in front of a rabid crowd, a perfect snapshot of how much they had accomplished. The end of the horsewoman era of wrestling in NXT comes at TakeOver Respect, when Bayley and Sasha competed in the first Iron Woman match. Also, the match is great. All of these matches are great. God, they were great. Number 5, Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar. Anyone who's even slightly familiar with who I am and what I like will know that this is my favorite entry on the list. The Olympic Machine versus the Beef. So Kurt and Brock were friends when Brock Lesnar was screwed by Paul Heyman at Survivor Series 2002, handing Brock's undisputed championship to the Big Show. Angle then enlisted Brock's help at Armageddon 2002 when Angle wrestled Show for the belt in exchange for Angle granting Brock a title shot if he did help him. On the December 19th, 2002 episode of SmackDown, the night after Armageddon, Kurt went back on his deal and hired Paul Heyman as the head of his management team, saying Brock will never get a title shot. Cut to Royal Rumble 2003 with Brock fighting Big Show for the right to enter the Rumble, which leads to the main event of WrestleMania 19 with Angle versus Lesnar. After taking time off to heal his neck, Angle returns for the Vengeance 2003 pay-per-view and competes in a triple threat for the championship against who else? Big Show and Lesnar. This leads to a singles match for the belt at SummerSlam 2003, Kurt versus Brock, which then leads to still my favorite match of all time on the September 16th, 2003 episode of SmackDown, a 60-minute Iron Man match between Angle and Lesnar. It's the best. It's the beefst. Number 4, The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Brahma Bull and the Rattlesnake were, without question, the 2 biggest stars of the Attitude Era, and whenever they collided in the ring, it was pure magic. The first major match between the 2 tentpoles of the wrestling boom took place in 1997 when they fought for the Intercontinental title at the D-Generation X In Your House pay-per-view. The 2 men temporarily settled their rivalry when they both competed in the Royal Rumble 98 before Stone Cold's rivalry with Vince McMahon really took off. Austin, Vince, and The Rock all finally coalesced into one big feud at Survivor Series 1998, aka the best Survivor Series, in the culmination of the Deadly Games tournament for the vacant WWF Championship. Their rivalry heats up at the Royal Rumble 99, followed by the infamous beer bar segment on the March 22nd, 99 episode of Raw. Austin and Rock then have their first Mania match at WrestleMania 15, followed by an even better no-holds-barred match at Backlash 99. Then 2 years pass before the rivalry starts up again, with both men locking eyes in the Royal Rumble 2001. This leads to their best Mania match at WrestleMania X7, followed by their Mania rematch set inside a steel cage on the April 2nd, 2001 episode of Raw. Their rivalry, one of the biggest draws in wrestling history, finally came to an end at WrestleMania 19 when the 2 fought one-on-one in Steve Austin's final match. Number 3, Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho. No one has a wrestling mind quite like Chris Jericho, and no one depicts their mind slowly unraveling quite like Shawn Michaels. Their rivalry, which took up the brunt of 2008, was hands down the best of the year, and it all started at Backlash. Furious with HBK for retiring Charlotte's dad, Batista and the Showstopper fight at the post-Mania pay-per-view with Chris Jericho as the special guest referee. As a result of, no spoilers, something happening in that match, Jericho and Michaels fight at Judgment Day back when the feud was still relatively friendly. That all changes big time on the 9th of June episode of Raw on a Jeritron shattering episode of the highlight reel. After that, the feud gets real ugly real fast, starting with a match at the Great American Bash 2008, which was so dramatic it almost broke WWE's rating system. This is all getting a bit intense, said the fans. Hold our beer, said Jericho and Michaels, when at SummerSlam, even family members got into the firing line. At Unforgiven, Jericho works double duty, first in an unsanctioned match against HBK, and then again in the World Heavyweight Championship scramble in the main event, Busy Boy. The feud finally blows off at No Mercy in a ladder match, which just so happened to win the Wrestling Observer Match of the Year award. It's pretty good. Number 2, Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan. If you've seen our 10 greatest WrestleMania builds list, you'll know that we're big fans of the Mega Powers Explode storyline. It takes over a year of build, spanning not one, but 2 WrestleMania main events, and it remains the paragon of long-term booking for the golden era of wrestling. It starts on the 12th of September 1987 episode of Saturday Night's main event. I would have been 19 days old. Aww. Randy Savage cements his face turn and the Mega Powers officially form. Their alliance pays off at WrestleMania 4 when Hogan comes to Savage's aid in the finals of the WWF Championship Tournament. At SummerSlam 88, the men officially tag together for the first time on pay-per-view as the Mega Powers take on the Mega Bucks, the team of Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant. During the match, no spoilers, but everyone notices Miss Elizabeth for some reason, and the tensions between Savage and Hogan begin to develop from there. Savage and Hogan competed together at Survivor Series 88 in a traditional 5-on-5, and the gears of hate slowly started to turn. Savage is pushed to his breaking point in the Royal Rumble match in 1989, and what happens in that Rumble also served to set up a tag team match between the Mega Powers and the Twin Towers, Big Boss Man and Akeem the African Dream, on the main event 2, which saw Savage finally lose it on the Hulkster. This whole feud reached its peak at WrestleMania 5 when the Mega Powers exploded in a fantastic match between Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan with the WWF Championship on the line. And finally, number 1, Johnny Gargano versus Tomaso Ciampa. It's an odyssey, it's beautiful, it's arguably too long, but it's also the closest to a perfect hybrid of modern in-ring action and classic long-term psychological booking. It really starts in the Cruiserweight Classic episode 4 during the first round match between DIY tag partners Gargano and Ciampa. Fast forward to NXT TakeOver Toronto with DIY taking on the Revival in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the NXT Tag Team Championships. It's the dog's bollocks. Watch it immediately. DIY at its best. And so come the feelings at TakeOver Chicago when DIY main evented a takeover for the first time against the Authors of Pain in a ladder match for the tag straps. The Gargano-Ciampa rivalry takes a brief hiatus due to Ciampa suffering a ruptured ACL, but resurfaces after an amazing match between Andrade and Gargano at NXT TakeOver Philadelphia. Their rivalry heats up further on the 21st of February 2018 episode of NXT, where Johnny Gargano puts his career on the line against Andrade's championship. At TakeOver New Orleans, the two men have their first TakeOver match one-on-one, followed up by a street fight at TakeOver Chicago 2. On the 25th of July 2018 episode of NXT, Tomaso Ciampa faces Aleister Black for the NXT Championship when a wild Gargano appears, which leads 2 years on from their match at the Cruiserweight Classic to TakeOver Brooklyn 4 and their last man standing match. That match was originally supposed to be a triple threat with Aleister Black, but Black was removed from the match after being attacked by an unidentified assailant. Who could it have been? Gargano and Black have an important cage match on December 19th, 2018's episode of NXT, which led to both Gargano and Ciampa having championship matches at NXT TakeOver Phoenix. This all centers around a brief reformation of DIY, which ends once again on March 13th, 2019's episode of NXT in the semi-finals of the Dusty Classic. Their rivalry is once again beset by a Ciampa injury though, leading to a radically changed TakeOver New York with an iconic ending. And just when you thought it was safe to go back in the friendship, at NXT TakeOver Portland, the tale twists yet again, which set up their grand finale on the April 8th episode of NXT. And when it was done, it was done. And those are just 10 amazing feuds to binge watch in isolation. What feuds do you recommend? Head over to the comments and let's create a watch list for everyone keeping themselves safe under lock and key, because great wrestling is the perfect distraction right now. And why not subscribe to WrestleTalk while you're at it, and keep safe, everyone.